When I signed that paper, I didn't feel anything. No anger. No fear, just emptiness. It was just a deal. An arranged marriage between two wealthy families trying to keep up appearances. He was rich, influential, and completely emotionally unavailable. I was just another pawn used as currency to strengthen an empire. There was no proposal. No flowers. Just a date. A flawless ceremony. And a man who didn't look me in the eyes, not even once. But in the silence of that cold mansion, between coffee without conversation and dinners in utter silence, something strange started to happen. Small gestures. Fleeting glances. A presence that began to feel heavier. He started noticing when I wasn't there. And I began to feel alive for the first time in years. But believe me, what brought us together wasn't love at first sight. It was survival. It was pain. And a secret that almost destroyed everything. And that's what you're about to discover. Stay until the end, because this story doesn't have a charming prince. It has redemption. It has someone who learned to love too late. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever fallen in love with someone who, at first, seemed incapable of loving? Subscribe to the channel and hold on tight, because what you're about to hear will hurt and heal you at the same time. It was a cloudy afternoon in Milan when the contract was signed. No rings, no emotion, just lawyers, pens, inkwells, and champagne glasses that felt more like props in a cold theater. The room was silent, as if even the air was afraid to move. And there, at that dark mahogany table, two lives were about to be tied by a knot no one could tell. Was it a ribbon or a chain? My name is Mia Ferrucci, only daughter of one of Italy's most traditional families. I grew up in a house where love was measured by etiquette, and smiles always came after a toast. Since I was a child, I was taught to cross my legs when sitting, to keep perfect posture, and to smile, even when all I wanted to do was scream. I wasn't raised to love. I was molded to perform. The man I was promised to was named Leandro Bellanti, a financial magnate with a mind like a chessboard and a heart made of ice. He had everything, except warmth. His presence felt like a winter that never ended. Cold eyes, impeccable posture, a voice low and sharp. When our parents announced the arrangement, he simply nodded, as if he'd just approved a business merger. We met only 3 times before the wedding. Twice at formal dinners, and once to discuss the prenuptial agreement. No children required. No emotional obligations. Just a convenient alliance to merge assets, companies, and reputations. He made it clear. I don't believe in love, Isabel. I hope you won't fool yourself either. I just smiled. Don't worry. I unlearned that a long time ago. The wedding took place at a luxurious villa on the Amalfi Coast. 100 carefully selected guests, designer dresses, and vows whispered like contractual clauses. When he took my hand at the altar, his skin was ice cold, and the only thought that crossed my mind was, how can something so beautiful on the outside be so hollow on the inside? On our wedding night, there was no dance, no kisses, just a long hallway leading to separate bedrooms. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, still wearing the white dress, and felt a sting in my chest. It wasn't sadness. It was numbness, an absence of feeling so deep it was frightening. But deep down, a part of me screamed, this can't be all there is. This can't be the life I'll accept to live. What I didn't know was that silent house, that closed-off man, that soulless marriage would change me, because something inside him, even buried, was also screaming for help. But that I would only discover much later. The Bellanti mansion was imposing, surrounded by white columns, perfectly symmetrical gardens, and windows too tall to ever see the soul of those who lived inside. On the outside, it was a symbol of status, photographed in magazines, praised by architects. Inside, it was a monument to silence, a place where the air felt too heavy to breathe freely. On my first day there, I was received by a stern housekeeper, dressed in dark clothing and walking with measured steps. She showed me to my bedroom, luxurious, of course, and separate from Lorenzo's. Naturally. We even had different floors. That's what the agreement specified. No intimacy, no invasion of space, no touch unless strictly necessary. Our days followed an almost robotic routine. Breakfast was served on opposite ends of a long dining table. I had jasmine tea. He drank black coffee, no sugar. Sometimes, our eyes would accidentally meet, but they'd quickly look away, as if eye contact broke some kind of invisible clause. It was like living next to an elegant stranger, who never missed a tie knot, but always forgot to say good morning. I used to wonder every single day who that man really was when no one was watching. What did he feel when he stood on the balcony, staring at the sea, so lost in thought it was as if the world had vanished around him? What had made him so cold, so distant from anything that breathed emotion? But he never gave anything away. Trying to read him was like trying to decipher a statue. Life at the Bellanti mansion went on with the same elegant monotony as always. And yet something had changed. Something invisible, but undeniable. The air felt heavier, thick with unspoken words and glances that lingered just a second too long. The routine hadn't shifted, but now I heard Lorenzo's silences differently. They no longer sounded like disdain, they sounded like defense. And it was on a rainy morning, one of those when the sky seems to weigh on your shoulders, that everything truly began to shift. I was in the greenhouse, one of the few places in the mansion where I still felt free. The plants, the flowers, the smell of wet soil, it was all that remained of anything real to me. I was tending to a small orchid that had been wilting for weeks. It was stubborn like me. That's when Leandro showed up. No warning. No formality. He left his umbrella at the door and walked in, sleeves rolled up, his hair a little messy, a rare thing. He never came in here. Ever. "I thought you were in your room," he said, voice neutral, almost uneasy. "I escaped from it," I replied, still kneeling, wiping the orchid's leaves. A tense silence fell. He studied the plant for a few moments, then looked at me and said, almost in a whisper, "You shouldn't be withering in this place too." I froze. Inside, I was struck by his words like lightning. Lorenzo, the man who never showed anything, had just compared me to a plant and admitted he saw my pain. I looked at him, waiting for something more, but he only dropped his gaze and added, "This flower, it'll only bloom if it's moved to a new pot. Maybe you too." That metaphor haunted me for days. That same night, something even more unexpected happened. I went into the library and found a book on botany, left open on the table. It was old, filled with handwritten notes. When I opened it, a dried flower fell out. Inside the cover, a faded dedication. For those who understand that beauty requires silence and patience. I knew it was from him. No note, no signature. But it was the first time he had left me something, even indirectly. That small gesture shook everything inside me. I started watching him differently. Leandro wasn't just silence. He was someone suffocating something that longed to be free. There was pain there, and maybe an unresolved past. That night, after another quiet dinner, I couldn't sleep. The brooch he had given me still rested in the palm of my hand. I stared at it as if trying to decode a lost language. Why had he given me that? And why now? More than the gift, it was the gesture that unsettled me. The man who claimed not to believe in love had chosen a camellia, a flower that symbolizes admiration and deep affection. I descended the dark house quietly, guided only by the soft glow of the sconces. My feet took me where I had never dared to go, Leandro's private studio. The door was slightly ajar. Something about the scene felt strange. The entire house was asleep, but that one sliver of light seemed to invite me in to uncover a secret. I pushed gently. The room was unlike anything else in the mansion. Nothing cold or calculated. It was a living space, even chaotic. Stacks of open books, canvases resting against the walls, yellowed sheet music, and on the desk, a framed photo of a young woman with a sweet smile. Curiosity overtook me. I stepped closer and saw the name written on the back. Adelaide, 1999. Suddenly, Leandro appeared behind me. He didn't shout.
Didn't scold me.
He just stood there, watching, as if he had always known this moment would come. "She was my sister," he said, voice low and more vulnerable than I had ever heard. I turned slowly. He didn't look like Leandro Belanti, the untouchable heir. He looked like a boy haunted by a ghost. "She died when I was 18. A car crash. She was coming home from a piano recital. I was supposed to pick her up, but I was too busy. My father's business dinner." He sat on the couch, elbows resting on his knees. The raw pain in his voice was heartbreaking. After that, I shut everything down, locked up my emotions like they were dangerous. Because feeling makes you lose. And I lost everything when I lost her. I didn't say a word. I simply sat beside him. That night was the first time we were together. Not as husband and wife, but as two souls broken in different ways. He didn't touch me. I didn't touch him. But there, side by side, listening to the rain tapping gently on the windows, we shared a silence that spoke louder than words. A fragile truce. A beginning. And perhaps the first crack in the armor of a man who, for far too long, believed that love was a weakness. Two survivors. Two orphans of affection. He showed me his sister's sheet music, the paintings she used to create, and the old letters she kept like sacred relics. There, in that secret studio, Leandro let every mask fall. And for the first time, I understood. He wasn't cold, he was frozen. And I began to want to melt him. When I returned to my room, long after midnight, the brooch was still there on the table, shimmering under the moonlight. But now I saw it differently. It wasn't just a gesture. It was a cry for help. And something in me answered. The following days were strangely calm. Lorenzo started to appear more in the spaces of the house where I used to see only staff. We had breakfast at the same time, sometimes even exchanged a few words. Once he asked the name of the book I was reading. Another time, he offered me a glass of wine without me having to ask. They seemed like simple acts. But in that universe where every movement felt rehearsed, they were the equivalent of an earthquake. I knew something was changing. And worse, he knew it too. But like every new beginning, the universe quickly tested our fragile certainties. It happened on a Friday afternoon. I was returning from a family charity meeting when I spotted a luxury car parked in front of the mansion. The model was familiar, elegant, red. When I walked in, she was already in the living room, sitting like she still owned the place. Clara. Tall, stunning, dressed like someone who doesn't believe in mistakes. She stood up with a cutting smile and walked toward me with the confidence of someone who already knew every corner, including the heart of the man I had married.
"Mia, right?"
She said, as if my name were just background noise. "I'm an old friend of Leandro." In her voice, old friend sounded more like open wound. Leandro appeared seconds later, and what I saw in his eyes shook me. It wasn't guilt. It was something between discomfort and debt. He didn't introduce me, didn't explain. He just said dryly, "Clara, this isn't a good time." But she wasn't intimidated. She ran her hand across his shoulder with intimacy and said, "Don't worry, darling. I just came to pick up a few things I left here. It'll be quick." That sentence echoed in my throat for hours. That night, Leandro didn't have dinner with me. He didn't show up. I went down to the library, trying to distract myself, but my mind always returned to the same question. Who was Clara, and why did she still seem to hold the keys to everything? I found the answer the next day. While walking through the back of the estate, I saw an old cardboard box sitting on a table in the winter garden. Curiosity 1. Inside there were photos, notes, travel clippings, and at the center of it all, an envelope in Lorenzo's handwriting. For when we're ready. The letter didn't say my name.
It wasn't about me.
It was for Clara. Words written in a time when I didn't even exist in his world. Sweet words. Honest ones. Promises of a future. And there, in that flower-filled garden, I tasted the bitterness of something that had never been mine, and that now I didn't even know if I wanted to fight for. I returned inside in silence. Lorenzo found me hours later in the hallway.
He tried to say something.
But I just walked past him. I was never good at sharing silence. And even worse at sharing hearts. But the worst was still to come. And now I ask you, what would you do if you were Mia? Tell me in the comments, because I need to know. Because Clara didn't come back just for memories. It wasn't just jealousy. It was as if I was once again in someone else's place, someone who had always belonged, while I was never really invited. In the days that followed, Leandro seemed torn. He spoke little, avoided being in the same room with me for too long. It wasn't the same coldness as before, it was worse. It was guilt. The weight of someone being swallowed by a past that had returned with a face, a name, and an expensive perfume. But what unsettled me most was the silence. Clara, on the other hand, moved through the house with calculated elegance. She walked around as if nothing had changed, spoke to the staff like she was still Mrs. Belanti, until, during a silent lunch, she dropped the bomb. Leandro, I accepted losing you. But I think it's only fair that Mia knows if I wanted, you wouldn't be with her right now. My fork slipped from my hand. Leandro stared at her, anger simmering beneath the surface, but he said nothing. And that hurt more than any insult. Later, I tried to confront him. Why is she still here? Because she knows things that could destroy everything, he said, eyes fixed on the floor. What are you talking about? I pressed. Mia, Clara knows the secrets behind my family's empire, the one my father built on lies. If I force her out, she could end everything.
You.
My blood ran cold. It wasn't just jealousy. Clara wasn't just an ex. She was a threat. That night, Leandro told me part of the truth. Clara had once been his fiancée. And during that relationship, she had discovered that the Belanti empire had been built through illegal schemes, corruption, and dirty deals. She knew names, dates, offshore accounts. She left me when she realized she was more interested in power than in me, he confessed. But now that she sees I have something to lose again, she came back. Something to lose? I asked, heart in my throat. You, Mia. I stayed silent. I wanted to believe those words. But how could I trust someone surrounded by so many walls, so many ghosts, so many pacts with the past? That very night, I found an anonymous letter slipped under my door. Cursive handwriting. Perfumed paper. A short phrase. He will never love you the way he loved me. And I knew, without a doubt, it came from her. But I also knew something else. Clara didn't just want Leandro back. She wanted me out of the way. And now, I was no longer safe in that house. After the perfumed letter left in the shadow of my door, I knew. Clara was circling me. Not physically, but like someone who studies their prey before the kill. She didn't need to scream or raise her voice. Her weapon was silent poison. And I began to lose myself in the house that once felt like shelter. Leandro tried to keep up appearances, but I saw in his eyes that something was eating away at him. He walked the halls with the distrust of a man who no longer knew who was truly in control of his own life. And when I asked if we could simply send Clara away, he only said, "This isn't just about money, Mia. It's about safety. She can destroy everything." But little by little, I understood. What she wanted to destroy wasn't the Belanti empire. It was me. Then came the invitation. An elegant crimson card with golden letters. Special dinner in honor of the new phase of the Belanti family. We hope to count on your presence, Mia. Signed, Clara. My first reaction was to refuse. But curiosity, and the need to confront her, spoke louder. I wore a simple black dress, tied my hair up, and went. The dinner was set in one of the family's restaurants, closed to select guests. I arrived with my heart pounding. Clara welcomed me with an angelic smile, as if we were old friends sharing memories. The room was lit with candles, filled with the scent of wine and spices, classical music softening the silence between courses. "I'm glad you came," she said, raising her glass. "We need more moments like this. Civilized women sharing the same man." I swallowed hard. "I didn't come for games, Clara." "Of course not," she replied, placing her hand over mine. But sometimes games choose us, don't they? The conversation dragged on for minutes that felt like hours. And only when the third course arrived, a delicate mushroom cream, did my inner alarm go off. The taste was off. The smell, metallic. I tried to hide it, kept smiling. But my throat started itching. My vision blurred. I stood up under the pretense of going to the bathroom, but stumbled along the way. My body felt heavy. Hands sweaty. Legs weak. I splashed water on my face. But the image in the mirror scared me. Pale, trembling, confused. I called Leandro with difficulty.
Once. Twice.
3 times. No answer. I gave up. And then hit my head against the door as I tried to return. Clara waited, standing, coat in hand.
You need rest.
Come, I'll take you home, she said, smiling. But in her eyes, there was no compassion. Only control. I refused.
Called a cab. She didn't insist.
But before I left, she whispered, next time don't trust the elegance of a dinner so blindly. I spent the night under medical observation. The official diagnosis, a severe allergic reaction. But I knew. Clara had tested me. She wanted to show she could get to me, that she could take me out anytime she wanted. And Leandro?
He only found out the next day.
And when he heard what happened, he didn't shout. He didn't run. He trembled. And for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. The fear of losing me. The day after the poisoning attempt, because that's exactly what it was, Leandro disappeared for the entire day. No note. No message. Just vanished. I was still recovering from a reaction, staying in the mansion under the watchful eyes of staff, who now seemed much more alert and nervous. No one said anything, but the silence in the hallway said it all. Clara had crossed the line. And Leandro knew it. He came back in the early evening. Eyes red, jacket wrinkled, tie loose. There was a weight on his face I had never seen before. He didn't say a word, just walked straight up to the 3rd floor, where Clara had been staying ever since she forced her way back into our lives. I couldn't resist. I waited a few seconds and followed. I stopped in front of the slightly open door. And I heard everything. You tried to kill Mia, Leandro said, his voice low. Dangerous. I just wanted to scare her, Clara replied, mocking. You always liked that about me, intensity. That's not intensity, Clara. That's sickness. A heavy silence fell, like the air had been sucked out of the room. She stepped closer to him, her tone now colder. You love her, don't you? Leandro hesitated for a moment. But then he said it, with the firmness of someone tired of running.
Yes.
You're going to throw everything away for her? For a fragile little girl you met out of obligation? I'll throw away everything that keeps me from the only thing that makes me breathe again. Clara laughed. That hollow laugh that only comes from a heart filled with wounded pride. Then listen carefully, Leandro, she said, walking over to the desk. If you stay with that woman, I'll destroy everything. I'll open the files, the documents about your father, the deals you helped cover up. I'll go to the press, the police. You won't just lose Mia, you'll lose your freedom. Leandro didn't reply. But I, standing outside that door with my heart pounding so hard it hurt, understood in that moment.
He was trapped.
And always had been. Clara wasn't just an ex. She was the consequence of every wrong choice Leandro had made, out of fear, out of cowardice, out of blind loyalty to his family. But now he was about to break the chain. The next morning, I found Leandro sitting in the library, alone. He looked at me with deep sorrow in his eyes. He asked me to sit, and for the first time, he told me everything. When I was 23, I signed a contract to cover up a multi-million-dollar embezzlement orchestrated by my father and uncle. Clara found out while we were together, and in exchange for her silence, we gave her power, companies, properties, influence. When we broke up, she promised to never get involved again. I believed her. I was naive. And now she's back. For revenge. And for you. For me? I asked in disbelief. Because you're the first real thing I've had in years, Mia. That shattered my heart. and rebuilt it at the same time. So, what are you going to do now? I asked. He took a deep breath. What I should have done a long time ago. Turn in my own father. Leandro spent the whole night writing.
He didn't sleep. He didn't eat.
He just wrote. The next morning, he called me into the office, the same place where we had sat so many times before, facing cold contracts, cutting silences, and soulless promises. This time, there was just one envelope on the desk. Thick paper, legal seal, and a phrase handwritten in his steady script. The truth sets you free. Is this everything? I asked, my voice trembling. Everything Clara used to control me. The evidence she had. The documents. The account numbers. The illegal contracts. And you're going to turn it in? He nodded without hesitation. I've already sent copies to my lawyer. This afternoon, he'll file it with the public prosecutor's office. And yes, my father will disown me. I might be sued. The media might destroy my name.
Why?
He stepped closer to me, and for the first time, his eyes were misty. Because I've lived too long inside a golden prison, Mia. And you were the first open window I ever saw. If I'm going to lose everything, let it be for something that finally means everything. I couldn't speak. I just held him, like someone holding a man on the edge of a cliff. And at the same time, like someone who believes that by jumping together, maybe we'd learn to fly. The day was long. By nightfall, the news began to leak. Headlines talking about financial scandals involving the Belanti family. Stocks dropping. Lawsuits forming. Robert Belanti, Leandro's father, was seen leaving the country. Clara, vanished. Disappeared like a storm that destroys everything, then hides behind the horizon. And us? We stayed in the eye of the storm. But strangely, lighter than ever. That night, Leandro sat at the piano for the first time. He played scattered notes.
Wrong.
Hesitant. But there was something beautiful in that imperfect sound. My sister Adelaide used to play this, he said. But I never learned. Today, I want to try. I sat there on the floor, listening to every clumsy note like they were confessions. Then he said, I never knew what peace felt like. Until now. In the days that followed, the mansion emptied out. The staff was dismissed. Documents collected. Businesses closed or sold. Everything that was excessive, cold, calculated was gone. It was just the two of us. No luxury. No inheritance. No masks. And for the first time, with everything that truly mattered. It took only 3 months to dismantle the Belanti empire. And just 3 weeks to discover that life, without luxury, could also be wonderful. After the scandal, the downfall, and the silence that followed the end of the family who once ruled headlines and boardrooms, we decided to leave the city. It wasn't an escape. It was liberation. We rented a small house in the Tuscan countryside, surrounded by vineyards and lavender fields. A red-tiled roof, pale walls, a garden that grew wild, without perfect pruning, and a kitchen where, for the first time, Lorenzo learned to fry eggs without burning the pan. The first night there felt strange. No servants, no doorbells, no urgent phone calls. The only sound was the wind whispering through the leaves and an old song playing softly from the radio. Do you know what's strange? He said, sitting beside me on the sofa.
What?
Not feeling like I'm missing anything. He smiled. And so did I. We started walking barefoot around the house. Bought fresh bread at the village market. Learned the neighbors' names. Planted mint in the backyard. And sometimes we just sat silently watching the sunset, as if that were more precious than any number in a Swiss bank account. Slowly, Leandro began to change. That coldness that once froze every room was replaced by lingering looks, gentle touches, and a kind of tenderness that only someone with a broken heart can give. He began to write chronicles, reflections, short texts about life, choices, losses. And one day, he read a piece aloud to me. Sometimes, we only learn to love after losing everything we thought was love. It was in the silence of an empty house that I discovered the sound of her heart beating beside mine. And in that rhythm, I finally found peace. I cried, not because it hurt, but because For the first time, it hurt beautifully. It was in this new time, slower, fuller of presence, that we built the life neither of us dared to dream of. A simple life. Real. Made of shared coffees, books read aloud, letters left on the desk, and notes hidden on shelves. Nothing grandiose. On the morning of my birthday, Leandro disappeared from bed early. I thought he had gone for a run, as he sometimes did. But he didn't come back. I waited, made coffee, looked out the living room window dozens of times. And I confess, for a moment, that old fear returned, the fear of being forgotten. But by noon, I found a note taped to the door. His handwriting, trembling, hurried, human. Today isn't your birthday. It's ours. Meet me in the field behind the house at 5 p.m. I'll be waiting for you where you taught me how to breathe. My heart raced. I put on a simple white dress, cinched at the waist, let my hair down, and I went. The sun was already beginning to gild the sky when I reached the clearing, and what I saw made me stop. In the middle of the clearing, Leandro had improvised a table with wildflowers, 2 wooden chairs, a bottle of wine, and on the cloth, my favorite book, Wuthering Heights. He was there, waiting, with a nervous smile and a sparkle in his eyes I'd never seen before. A sparkle of a man who chooses to love. Sit with me, he said, his voice low. We sat, drank in silence. And then he took a small box from his pocket. He opened it. But there was no ring. There was a wedding band broken in half. This was the ring from our arranged marriage, he said. When we got married, it symbolized what I thought commitment was. Form without feeling. But today I want to ask you to start over with me. With another ring, another meaning, another heart. Then he took out a new box from his coat pocket. Inside, 2 delicate rings made of silver and olive wood. They are made from the wood of the first tree we planted together here. I thought it would make sense. He knelt down, knees trembling, but eyes steady. Mia, will you marry me? For real this time? Not as an agreement, but as a step toward a lifetime? I couldn't answer right away, because emotion overflowed in tears. I bent down, took his hand, and said, I don't want to marry you. I want to stay married to you. But now, with our hearts together, we kissed under the sunset. The field around us seemed to silently applaud. And in that moment I knew this was the beginning, not of a new story, but of our story, truly real for the first time. The months after our new wedding were the quietest and happiest of my life. No luxuries, no parties, no headlines. Just peace. We woke up early. I made coffee. Leandro, awkward as always, made toast with too much jam. We read together under the tree in the backyard. Sometimes he wrote. Other times, he just looked at me, as if he still couldn't believe I was there. And I confess, sometimes I couldn't believe it either. Not out of doubt, but out of miracle. Because the man who once couldn't look me in the eyes now knew how to read them like no one else. One day, he showed up with an old camera in his hands. I found it in the attic. It still works, he said, with that childlike sparkle in his eyes. We started taking silly pictures of our feet in the dirt, of lunch plates, of the neighbor's dog who insisted on invading our garden. Each click was a reminder that we were alive, and for the first time, happy without pretending. But fate, as always, had one more card up its sleeve. One morning, I felt strange. A sudden nausea. Too sensitive. At first, I thought it was anxiety. Or maybe a cold. But Leandro, ever observant, went straight to the point. Have you thought about taking a test? The idea scared me. Me, a mother? After everything? With trembling hands and a racing heart, I took the test. I waited the longest minutes of my life. And when the second line appeared, everything around me went silent. I cried. From fear. From joy. From a new feeling that had no name, only shape. I showed the test to Leandro. He read it, looked at me, and knelt down. He said nothing, just held me, and cried. Not like someone desperate, but like someone who finally understood that life always had a plan, even if painful. and that everything, absolutely everything, had brought us here. That night, lying side by side, hands resting gently on my still silent belly, he whispered, "If it's a girl, I want her to be named Adelaide." My heart tightened. "And if it's a boy?" He smiled. "Then may he be someone who loves the way I've learned to love because of you." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face, and felt the world turn slowly, for the first time, to the right rhythm. Years passed. The house still stands, surrounded by the same vineyards and lavender fields. But now there are toys scattered across the garden, little clothes drying on the line, and a wooden swing creaking softly in the wind. Adelaide, yes, it was a girl, runs through the yard with her brown hair blowing in the breeze, eyes shining just like Leandro's, and the lightness in her chest I dreamed she would have. And him? Leandro still burns the eggs sometimes. He still writes with anxious handwriting. He still looks at me like someone who loves in awe, as if love still surprises him every single day. And me, I finally understood what he meant years ago when he left that camellia-shaped brooch on the table. You shouldn't bloom alone. Because today I bloom with him, with Adelaide, with the life we planted with dirty hands, patched hearts, and the courage to start over, even after everything. That broken ring from the arranged marriage is still kept in an old envelope inside the desk drawer. And from time to time, I show it to myself, not to remember the pain I suffered, but to never forget where I came from, because it was there, at the bottom of the emotional pit, in that silent mansion, in that soulless marriage, that I started hearing what no one else could hear, the sound of a heart trying to beat again. And when I allowed it to beat, for him and for me, everything changed. That marriage was just an agreement, but it made me feel alive again. And now, living is the most beautiful part of this story. If you've made it this far, breathe. Maybe you've lived something similar. Maybe you're still trying to understand what real love is. Or maybe you've learned, like me, that sometimes love comes after pain, and it heals everything that once seemed impossible. Leave a comment below. Have you ever felt alive again because of someone? And if this story touched your heart, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to believe that love isn't born perfect. It's born when we choose to stay. Until the next story.